And back to the global governance point, even then we may need more. And I'd like to, as we're running out of time, end where Thomas kind of was suggesting, which I think is a vital point to really kind of cap this rather nicely. How do we, I think it's almost the seminal geostrategic question of the age. If we sort out this reinvention, and I think we've made some real progress on, you still have to answer how do the rising powers be brought in to a system where there's stakeholders in this broadly, based upon things that they benefit from, Klaus, to use your terms, interest, things they gain, and in return from things they get. We can't ask them to do much if they don't see it as a benefit. If they're voting in the IMF and Benelux can outvote China, they're not going to take it seriously. So how do we go about, A, educating our peoples? And the European argument, you're going to get the world you want to live in, the multilateral world, but the paradox is you'll have far less of a say in that world than you're probably comfortable with, but you're going to get that world. Can people make that argument, and would that argument have traction? Same for the Americans. You're going to then be still the greatest power in the world, the chairman of the board, but there are going to be many other board members. They're going to change depending on the issue, and you're going to have to engage them, as you say, Klaus, without getting tired, time and time and time again. That's the thinking that has to be here, but what can we put on the table other than broadly economics as a carrot? Everyone wants to share in prosperity, and broadly on the avoiding a stick, security threats that we have in common, an Al-Qaeda type threat where the Chinese might be helpful and the Russians share intelligence with us because they don't want to be blown up either. Beyond those obvious points, is there more to fill that in, or is that a place to start? David?
Well, I think the first step is just to understand what they want.
Yeah. Ask them.
Ask. Because we may, again, I get back to there's a difference between self-interest and mutual interest. I think it would be a mistake to, on prima facie, assume that it will be a confrontation. Mm-hmm. It may end up being competitive and mix of it, but we should go in at least to find out what they want.
Rem.
I just say that multipolarity is an inherently unstable arrangement of powers where you have shifting alliances, new centers emerging. Like you say, the board of directors changes. And that leads to an increased risk for misinterpretation, misperception, and a risk of confrontation. But it also is an enormous challenge and a chance for creative diplomacy. So actually, from a more optimistic point of view, I think what we're entering is a new era of diplomacy, different from what it was over the previous 60 years. And that requires a lot in the way in which Western states formulate their foreign policy and how diplomats are trained and are sent out into the world to make these ends meet.
Erik, and then Klaus, and then Thomas.
Thomas's original point was that it's going to be very difficult to get these countries to behave like responsible stakeholders. I think that point stays on the table. I don't see how we resolve that problem. China has no interest in behaving like a responsible stakeholder. So it's going to be a challenge, I think, to organize the world around China. Just to give you an illustration, I talked to a scientist on the IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change, who explained that even if the OECD stopped using any fossil fuels, China and India together would be able to push us to unacceptable increases in temperature. So I think there's that issue. The other issue is that even the most long-standing and the most successful experiments in cooperation tend to break down under the pressure of the moment, which is the point that General Naumann made at the start. I'll give you two examples. One is what happened to Fortis here in the Netherlands when Fortis Nederland was nationalized without any consultation with the Belgian government, and the Belgian government was understandably upset by this. And another example would be the situation in Lampedusa in Italy, when the Italian government woke up one day and said, the easiest way to get these people off of Lampedusa would be to give them temporary residence permits and put them on a train to France. So these kind of sudden breakdowns in cooperation, I think we're not going to be able to insure against.
Klaus.
I think first of all, we should not think of multipolarity as a famous rabbit looking at the venomous snake. It is a reality, we have to live with it, and we have to take as much advantage as possible of it. It has advantages as well. But I think we need to convince our partners in this multipolar world of the necessity that power and influence can only be tolerated if they are connected to law, legality, and justice. And that it also means to accept responsibility. Whoever has power must be prepared to act responsibly. And then we have just one question left, if we all got them as far as that. Who will be the